Are you ready to feel the news pulse? Because right now we're going to go through all the top news of this day and beyond in our regular manner. Let's go. Tomorrow, a US delegation will travel to London for talks on ending Russia's war against Ukraine, said Keith Kellogg, the US President's special representative for Ukraine and Russia. The New York Post writes that representatives of the United States, Ukraine, and Europe want to make a decision on a full and comprehensive ceasefire in Ukraine during their meeting in London. After the document is agreed upon, it will be presented to the Russian Federation. What is known about the negotiation process? Watch in the material.
U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that negotiations to end Russia's war against Ukraine are approaching a culmination. He insists that neither side is manipulating his efforts to bring an end to this prolonged war. A decisive moment is coming, Reuters quoted Trump.
No specific number of days, but quickly, we want to get it done. If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass. But hopefully we won't have to do that.
During a press conference, when asked whether Putin was stalling the talks, Donald Trump responded that he hopes he doesn't. Earlier, he had given the Russian dictator a deadline to reach a ceasefire agreement by the end of April. However, the Kremlin continues to issue additional demands, from reopening U.S. airspace to Russian airlines, to lifting sanctions. Analysts believe Putin's so-called Easter truce is also part of this strategy of manipulation.
Наступил такой момент, когда он вынужден был.
The situation has reached a point where Putin is forced to respond due to a combination of factors: Ukraine's and its allies' firm stance on ending the war, and the actions of the Americans, who are making real efforts in this direction. Deadlines have been set. All of this combined led to his decision. Even if he wanted to resolve this quickly, it's not that simple.
Earlier, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington would end its mediation efforts if it became clear within a few days that a peace agreement couldn't be reached soon. The next day, President Trump confirmed this position. But analysts stress this doesn't mean an end to communication between Kyiv and Washington.
Если Соединенные Штаты так грюкнут,
If the United States slams the door, Ukraine may actually gain more room to build a more constructive relationship in areas like military technical cooperation. Right now, the US is positioning itself above the process. As an arbitrator, that's a kind of Solomon role. But if they step back from that, it may actually make it easier to publicly agree to things like selling air defense systems, for example.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin has openly stated it will not make compromises in the talks. Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, urged the U.S. to wash its hands and allow Russia to deal with the war more quickly. Russian propagandist Margarita Simonyan has also called for rejecting the U.S. plan because it does not include so-called denazification or recognition of the territories occupied by the Russian army.
These so-called root causes are a reference to Russia's pre-war demands that effectively amount to Ukraine's full capitulation and the installation of a pro-Russian government in Ukraine, from a report by the Institute for the Study of War.
This week, Donald Trump's team is heading to London for ceasefire talks on Ukraine, according to U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg. Meanwhile, Steve Witkoff, another special envoy representing the U.S. president, will again travel to Moscow to meet with the Russian dictator. The goal is to convince the Kremlin to accept the terms proposed by the United States, reports CNN. On April 11th, Witkoff had already met with Putin in St. Petersburg. According to Russian state media, the meeting lasted over 4 hours.
The source that spoke to CNN on Friday said that there are still pieces of the framework to be filled out, adding that the US plans to work with the Europeans and the Ukrainians on that next week in London. The Trump administration is simultaneously planning another meeting between Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and the Russians to get Moscow on board with the framework, from the CNN report.
The states may discuss a framework agreement to end Russia's war against Ukraine. Washington introduced the proposal on April 17th during talks in Paris with representatives from Ukraine, the UK, Germany, and France. Reported by Victoria Smirnova, UATV News.
Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, dies at 88. Pontiff is remembered as the Argentine cardinal a categorical opponent of abortion, gender reassignment, euthanasia, and death penalty. Pope Francis, unlike some of his predecessors, did not exclude the participation of LGBT people in church life, saying that if people have a desire for God, how can the Pope oppose it? In one of the interviews, Francis directly called on Ukraine to surrender. I believe that those who see the situation, those who think about people, those who have the courage to raise the white flag and negotiate are stronger, he once said.
Pope Francis did a lot of good, and we see and understand that the good things he did are so much bigger than the painful thing he did to us. I hope that the next pope, who will be elected, will be more favorable to Ukraine and will have the strength to call things by their names.
Despite his ambiguous position regarding Ukraine-Russia war, which is essential for us personally and for many of our audience, Pope will be remembered as a friend of peace and reformer of the Church. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, 21st of April 2025, at the age of 88 at his residence in the Vatican in Casa Santa Marta. President Zelenskyy plans to attend the funeral ceremony for Pope Francis as well as Donald Trump. Republican Fitzpatrick signs shell for Putin during his visit to the front line in Ukraine. Brian Fitzpatrick visited Ukrainian soldiers on the front line on April 18th and signed a shell for Putin. It was a great honor to deliver a very personal message for Vladimir Putin today from the front lines of the war near the Russian border on behalf of the PA1 community. The only acceptable information to report is that the message was delivered accurately, Fitzpatrick wrote.
Hey everyone, Brian Fitzpatrick here, Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. We've been on the ground here in Ukraine for several days, on the front lines, up and down the border on the Ukraine side of the Ukraine-Russian border. Where we're at now, we'll keep the location undisclosed since I'm with some Ukrainian warriors here, but this is just one example of Russian-occupied territory up until not too long ago that they've completely burned down. This used to be a rich forest. This is what the Russians do. They just level buildings, indiscriminate burning and destruction of civilian areas. And that's their MO. That's what they do. It's just blunt force trauma. They overwhelm you with bodies, overwhelm you with artillery, without not a whole lot of thought behind it. But the good news is we spent several days, and I've spent a lot of time in this country, as you all know. This morning we were with the National Guard Artillery, all the way up through organizations like this, the 3rd Assault Brigade, which is completely different. They are the high-tech drone operators that are manufacturing and operating the state-of-the-art drones that have completely changed warfare, not just here, but across the globe going forward. These are amazing soldiers. The men and women of the Ukrainian military, much like the men and women of the U.S. military, have this amazing fighting spirit. They're fighting for their democracy. They're fighting for their freedom. All of us in America need to stand behind them. I, for one, they know very well, very well, that I always have and always will have their back. I encourage all my colleagues in Congress to come here, not just to go to Kyiv in City Center. I was there yesterday with President Zelenskyy, but to come to the front line, spend time with these men and women.
The large-scale plan to rearm the German army cannot be delayed for decades. Europe needs to prepare for war with Russia in the next 2 years, military analysts believe. They are confident that Berlin is capable of arming not only the Bundeswehr, but also its allies in Europe. Are the German army and society ready for such a scenario? Natalya Gusk investigated.
German Chancellor candidate Friedrich Merz is ready to increase support for Ukraine. The head of the Christian Democratic Union has declared that Germany is capable of leading Europe in this new geopolitical reality.
Germany will again take on responsibility in Europe and in the world. Quietly but reliably, not arrogantly but in partnership. Friedrich Merz, candidate for Chancellor of Germany.
After decades of defense budget cuts, Russia's war against Ukraine has forced Germany to rethink its approach. Following amendments to the constitution passed by the Bundestag, the German government will now be able to invest up to €1 trillion in defense. This includes abolishing the so-called debt brake. Previously, the state was not allowed to borrow more than 0.33% of GDP for defense purposes. Now it can triple that amount. The reform initiative came from CDU leader Friedrich Merz.
Germany is again on the right path. Germany will fulfill its defense commitments, and Germany is ready to strengthen its own competitiveness. And this is not just about Germany, it's about Europe, about the European Union. Germany will once again become a strong partner within the EU, and we will lead Europe forward. Friedrich Merz, candidate for Chancellor of Germany.
Germany must be capable of arming Europe, experts say. NATO countries could find themselves drawn into a military conflict with Russia within the next 2 years. Under these conditions, the Bundeswehr must first and foremost expand its arsenal of heavy military equipment: Leopard 2 A8 tanks, long-range Taurus cruise missiles, Boxer armored vehicles, Iris-T air defense systems, and Gepard anti-aircraft guns.
Russia views war as a continuous process. It's already taking actions that look like war, though perhaps aren't quite war, mainly hybrid tactics. So we are in a situation that is neither fully peace nor full-scale war. And it's precisely in this gray zone where we find ourselves now. Carsten Breuer, Inspector General of the Bundeswehr, in an interview with Deutsche Welle.
The German armed forces are currently facing a personnel shortage, and the military profession remains unpopular among young people. Some European states, in light of the Russian threat, are considering reintroducing mandatory military service. In Germany, however, service remains voluntary. Currently, the German army numbers 182,000 personnel. If Russia launches a full-scale military aggression, the Bundeswehr would need at least 460,000 soldiers and officers, according to the Inspector General. To close the gap, Germany plans to rely on reservists and increase the number of professional recruits. At the same time, Germany is working to expand its support for Ukraine. Friedrich Merz has stated that he has always supported sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine, provided the decision is coordinated with European partners. The United Kingdom has already pledged to back Germany in this matter.
The UK had long been in favor of Germany giving Taurus missiles to Ukraine and would back the move if it were taken now by the new Chancellor. The UK source said, "We continue to work with our partners, including Germany, to equip Ukraine as best we can to defend its sovereign territory," from the Telegraph publication.
Previously, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz declined to send Taurus missiles to Kiev, fearing escalation and possible German involvement in a direct conflict with Moscow. However, Merz now appears ready to deliver the missiles. This shift has also been driven by Russian terrorist attacks on Ukrainian civilian cities.
Putin wants to continue destroying Ukraine, and by doing so, continue attacking peace in Europe. This clearly shows that anyone who truly wants peace must defend Ukraine, must support Ukraine. And so, strengthening Ukraine's defense and increasing support is in fact a policy of peace. Annalena Baerbock, Federal Minister for Foreign Affairs of Germany.
Friedrich Merz, leader of the German Conservatives, could be confirmed as Germany's next chancellor as early as May. Following his appointment, his first foreign visit is likely to be to Ukraine, according to Welt. He is expected to attend the Coalition of the Willing Summit in Kiev in May. According to journalists, other participants will include French President Emmanuel Macron and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Reported by Natalya Gusk, Volodymyr Shtenhelov, UATV News.
The European Union is ready to help Moldova in the fight against Russian hybrid attacks, said the head of the European Parliament's Defense Committee. In particular, this concerns Russian interference in Moldova's democratic processes. Moscow has launched a large-scale disinformation campaign to influence the results of the upcoming parliamentary elections in the country. The topic will be continued by Valeria Nikipilova.
The mandate of Moldova's current parliament expires on July 11th, and according to national law, elections must be held no later than 3 months afterward. Authorities in Chisinau have now set the date, September 28, 2025. President of the Moldovan parliament, Igor Grosso, has stressed that the upcoming vote will be one of critical importance.
Despite the fact that you have heard it many times over the years, these elections are truly decisive. We either throw everything away, destroy everything we have achieved on the European path, and block any chance of joining the European Union, or we move forward on the path of development and peace. Our task in these elections is to ensure that we do not turn away from the path of peace and development, that the country does not return to the Kremlin's control, that we preserve our sovereignty and freedom. Igor Grosu, president of the Moldovan parliament, in Facebook.
If parliamentary elections were held in Moldova in the next few days, according to the result of polls, 3 parties would enter the legislature. The party of the President of Moldova, Maya Sandu's Party of Action and Solidarity, would be in the lead.
The Action and Solidarity Party would receive 24.4% of the respondents' votes. In second place is the Socialist Party with 13.1%. Next come the Alternative Bloc, the Victory, and Our Party. At the same time, a significant part of the respondents have not yet made a choice. 6.3% said they would not go to the elections, and another 19.9% found it difficult to answer or did not give one. The IMAS Sociological Company results of the public opinion poll from Newsmaker publication.
President Maya Sandu is convinced that Russia will attempt to interfere in the upcoming elections, just as it tried to do during Moldova's 2024 presidential race. According to Sandu, Moscow's goal is to replace Moldova's leadership with Kremlin-aligned figures.
We saw this unprecedented interference last year, and it's quite clear that Russia will try again to influence the outcome this year. This isn't just about Moldova. Russia's real target is Ukraine. If the Kremlin gains control over Moldova, it will use our country against Ukraine.
Sandu also warned that there is genuine risk that Russia could try to drag Moldova into war. She emphasized that such a development would not only endanger Moldovan citizens, but would also complicate the situation in Ukraine.
We share a 1,200-kilometer border with Ukraine. Imagine if, overnight, this friendly border became one controlled by Moscow.
To undermine Sandu and her Party of Action and Solidarity, the Russian disinformation network Matryoshka is running a major campaign targeting Moldova. Videos are circulating on X social network and Blue Sky, falsely presented as content from international media outlets or academic institutions.
In addition to accusations of corruption and pressure on opponents, the videos with university professors use the usual narratives of Kremlin propaganda. In particular, it is claimed that Sandu belongs to the LGBT community, and under her rule, non-traditional values in Moldova will inevitably displace traditional ones. Another video says that Sandu plans to follow the example of Ukraine and gain control over the Orthodox Church, namely to subordinate the Chisinau Diocese of the Russian Orthodox Church to the Romanian Orthodox Church. According to the authors of the video, this will be one of the steps towards the final merger of Moldova with Romania. From the Insider Investigation.
As part of the Matryoshka campaign, 10 videos have been released. 4 masquerading as new contact. Disinformation agents have also distributed a fake cover of the French newspaper La Tribune. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Valeria Nikipelova, UATV News.
So that was it for today, friends. We hope that you like our extended news post format, and if so, share this video with friends and leave a comment below to help the channel grow. We cherish your feedback and support the most. Stay safe and don't let propaganda win.